The heated debate on the tax reform bills currently at the National Assembly has continued. The usual suspicions that greet national policies in the country has divided many, with some claiming it is skewed against them. However, the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Reforms and Tax Committee, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, says the bills were designed in good faith to solve existing problems. He also claimed the bills are being used to fight a proxy war. The question arises, what are the underlying interests at play on this matter? Joining us on Arise Prime Time to unpack the controversies surrounding these bills is the Special Advisor to the President on Policy Communications, Mr. Daniel Bwala. Great to have you this evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
So, since this bill was introduced to the National Assembly last year, it has been a lot of public discourse going on around it. But let's start from ground zero, as a refresher. What are the primary objectives of these tax reform bills? Because, it looks like we're moving away from the main issues. What are the primary objectives?
I think that, well, thank you for having me. I think that the objective of the tax laws, because there are four, is to revolutionize tax system in Nigeria. There are some people who also talked about the income generation, but basically it's the tax laws, because if you look at the economy of Nigeria and transactions in Nigeria, they have been built on old tax laws that are inchoate. They are no longer applicable. And some of them are even anti the poor, vulnerable, the normal people, where you pay tax when you eat. All these, you pay tax when you eat, you enter public transportation, you pay tax. And some of these things have added some hardship to the people. So when this reform agenda was started, part of what we looked at were some of these areas. How do we alleviate the sufferings of the people? How do we bring about a tax system that will be friendly with the generality of Nigeria as against few people benefiting and a lot of people suffering? That's basically the spirit and intent. And
right. But you do believe that when you say these things, there are many who do not believe what the president is saying or what you are saying regarding these bills. Why do you think it is viewed with so much suspicion?
There is unanimity of acceptation in Nigeria, even by those who have reservation in some of the provisions. There is unanimity of purpose and acceptation that the tax laws are very good, and it will revolutionize economy in Nigeria. They also believe that it's about time we see that. Their only fears is the derivation, which is a section in one of the four laws.
One, yes.
Yeah. So, and it's important the Nigerian people know that, so that you don't throw the baby with the bathwater, so that we don't create the impression that the entire law has a problem. Even with respect to the section in contest or in contestation, it is still what, as a people in Nigeria, we can come together, refine it. Because the essence of lawmaking is to provide a law that is for peace, order, and good government. So anybody who has reservation, probably, people have a right to express their fears, but let the dialogue continue. The problem is where there is no dialogue on how to fine-tune and arrive at that.
Right. We'll come back to that section on dialogue. Part of the anger is that the National Economic Council, comprising all governors and chaired by the Vice President, recommended a withdrawal of the bill for more consultation. But the President insisted that the process at the National Assembly needs to go on. How do you think that portrays the President as someone who doesn't perhaps listen? That's how he's being viewed. How would you respond to that?
So you need to know that the National Economic Council, sitting under their powers, every recommendation they make is advisory. There is no conclusion or resolution of the National Economic Council that binds the president. Just like the way special advisor will advise the president. And your duties stop when the advice is given. He must not follow your advice, that you make available your opinion regarding a matter. So when we don't understand that, that's where we begin to have a problem, where you have manipulation. The Economic Council consisting of the governors. How many governors do we have in Nigeria? There are 36, right? Probably if you add the FCT minister, there are 37. How many population of Nigerians do we have? Over 220 million.
But these are representatives of the people, right?
Yes, but we have seen also how states are governed, you know, with laws and bills that are antithetical to the people, and without mentioning a particular state. For example, I can give you an example of a state that I know in Nigeria that collect heavy tax on keke nape people. And the tax they collect from the people, if you subtract it from what the people earn, it is more or less like you're working as a slave. What's the difference between that taxation and the fears that you have about the tax system at the federal level?
Yeah, you are correct. Okay, it's advisory. The president doesn't have to take the advice. However, for something such as this, you know, this is one of the, you know, big policies that would make a big impact on the country. So you want to see the president as being someone that listens. And the tax reform bill is an executive bill, and the vice president presided over the NEC meeting that requested it be withdrawn. Will you then say that the president and the vice president are not on the same page? Because
not really.
There's also...
So you can preside over a meeting that will arrive at a conclusion, and it is not suggestive that you led the resolution. Of course, you know, if you study corporate governance, you know that board meetings and resolution are arrived at by popular votes. When majority of the people agree to go this way, even you who is presiding, if you're going the other way, it means you have to follow the majority. So it would be wrong to conclude that because the council or the advisory council met and they arrived at something, that it is suggestive that the vice president made them arrive at that. That's one. Number two, Section 5 of the Constitution says the executive powers of the Federation lies in the president. The entire executive powers, which is executing the laws of Nigeria and administering the government of the Federation. But in that Section 5, it says he exercised that power either by himself or through the vice president or to the ministers of the government of the Federation or other officers. So the power lies in him. And he can tell you, do it for me, this other one, do it, right? That's one side. The second side, and which is the argument of the president, is don't throw the baby with the bad water. So the conclusion of the council is suggestive of throw the baby with the bad water, because they said withdraw it for consultation. No, it should have been this bill should now be subjected to deliberation. So the president's reaction to that is he said, no, take it to the National Assembly. Our own side as executive is to sponsor a bill. But the law recognizes a body in Nigeria that deliberate and they make the laws. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we will arrive at that. Now, at the National Assembly level, every governor has 3 senators. And in some cases, some governors have 9 House of Reps, or even more than that. Now, I think that a governor should synergize with his lawmakers in the National Assembly. As this bill is in the National Assembly subjected to debate and public hearing and the rest, please carry our concern, because that's the whole idea of representation, that when you go, you speak for the people. So at the level now, it has passed the executive branch. But don't forget that even at that level, the president ensured that the tax lead team met with all the stakeholders necessary.
So we're going to come to that because the chairman of the committee said a lot, you know, when he was interviewed about what was, because initially when they were talking, people were talking about dialogue, consultation, the impression was that the committee didn't speak to people widely. However, after the interview, it happened that a lot was done. But let me ask you, what's the relationship currently between the president and the vice president?
Excellent relationship, as you can see. And on many occasions, the TV houses will be covering that. And the vice president also has represented the president, even up to a few days ago, right? Representing the president in the states of the Federation, sometimes out of Nigeria, to be able to represent him and then act on his behalf on matters that are needful. You
are from the north.
Right.
Why do you, what do you believe is truly going on behind the headlines in terms of opposition coming from that region? Is this purely politics, or is there more to it? What is going on?
So there are two things, two sides to what you have just said. One is what I'm not comfortable with, but it's not you. All the media in Nigeria, they've been running with that story, that the North is objecting. When you say that, you are disingenuous to a lot of Northerners who support that.
Right.
One of which is sitting here, right?
Maybe the people that are in opposition are louder
Right.
in the press.
So,
maybe that's what it is.
Yes, but the proper thing is, because there are governors, not from the north, but they also come from the parts of Nigeria that they believe if this tax law is implemented, they also will have a reduced revenue.
There's that, of course.
So they try. So I prefer that the argument should be between the federal government and the state government, which is the same, no different from the argument that was held or that we had regarding the local government autonomy. The governors were unanimous throughout Nigeria. It's the same thing with that. And so we as stakeholders cannot unify Nigeria when the conversation is around North versus South, when in actual fact it is not the case, because there are lots of Northerners who are in support of it and there are some Southerners who are not in support of it. But once you run with the narrative that it is North versus South, then you will now create a scenario where people then go back to their cocoons. And at the end of the day, the progress that we want to make will now be hindered or be delayed. But it is a case of governors versus the president. And president is making all the effort necessary to ensure that they have an understanding. His posture, his disposition, and his relationship with the governors, so far from what has been reported, has been fantastic. Only a few days ago, they were in Lagos to visit with him. He told them, even regarding local government autonomy, he said, nobody is interested in taking the chairman under you. We only want a better Nigeria.
Right.
That's the posture of the president.
Let me share a little bit of what Mr. Oyedele said.
Right.
He talked about the committee was set up in August. There were more than 120 members from across, geopolitical zones. 20 government institutions represented, 45 students from 22 universities, private sector represented. Said the committee wrote, governors, only Lagos State met them, and Deputy Governor of Kaduna State had the time to meet them. There was engagement with finance commissioners all across Nigeria. They met with over 100 ulamas, people from more than 40 sectors. The committee met severally, every day, and a lot, So what it seems like now is that there was limited information about what the committee did before the National Assembly bill, or before it was sent to the National Assembly. So would you say that this was partly a failure of communication from the presidency?
That is exactly wrong.
Okay.
And I will make the case.
How so? Yeah.
Good. I will make the case. In my recent memory, there has not been a subject in the lawmaking process or governance in which it was given the widest consultation than this tax bill. I give you an example. As a person, as an advisor to the president on my own, I have had 33 interviews, real-time, television, radio, Zoom, only on tax bill. I have even escalated our approach where we had meetings with Nigerians in unconventional environment. I had a hangout, coffee hangout with Nigerians from different political parties where we deliberated on that. You'll be interested. It will be interesting to hear the questions that they ask. This is just me. The tax team have probably had more than twice or three times what I have done.
Yeah, from what he said, it seems that a lot of work has been put in before they got to the National Assembly.
And his limitation, he said, is that some of these meetings were called by certain individuals. They will turn up. They will not get to meet them. It will be cancelled. In some cases, they will wait to the early hours of the morning. So the effort on their own part has been made. And he mentioned names, institutions. So he could not have lied. Otherwise, the individuals who he lied against, assuming it was a lie, they will be able to come out and say that never happened. It is exactly the point you said earlier. When you said, is it political or lack of communication? It is political. In Nigeria today, anything that you kickstart, if people don't want its realization, they will bring political undertone to it. So some political parties can take it. In some cases, it might even be members of your own political party, but they are politicizing. It is possible for a member of your party to politicize an issue. So a very important issue has been politicized by some governors. Some of them have not politicized. They are quite honest about their position, and they feel that probably I cannot be convinced otherwise. And some, they are feeling, if we maintain a position like that, there will certainly be concession. You see, even in America, it happens, Republicans and Democrats. If the Republicans, what you will see when Donald Trump claims, if he wants to pass comprehensive immigration reform, that will be better for him. And Democrats say that, okay, in this one, we are going to then throw another meat and say, if you want us to agree with this, then you must take this. This thing is part of democracy.
So it's
maybe
a lot of negotiation has to go on.
Exactly. Exactly.
So did you underestimate the blowback that would come from this?
I don't think there's even a blowback. I think what happened is...
Or this type of reaction?
I never at the beginning, quite frankly, envisioned that it will come to that point. So at the beginning, our thought was that there was no proper information dissemination. So we now sprung into action. And then at some point we felt the elite understood it. They just took position. So let us go to the masses, because one fact that everybody has agreed, including the governors, is that this tax loss is going to benefit generality of Nigerians, beginning with the poor, the vulnerable, the entrepreneurs, people in the working class, businessmen, and the rest. There is nobody that will not benefit from there. Even the governors have agreed that states will benefit in some other areas. Then they arrive at one section and say, on this one, we want to change. So in other words, everybody agrees there should be a tax reform. But on this subject, we are disagreeing because we feel that this derivation, some of them have raised germane question. When you say, if it is based on consumption, if I make a phone call in my hometown, why should Lagos get more than that? So they will sit down and fine-tune it. I believe there is no law that cannot be fine-tuned. Even the president did not say provision of certain section that is under contention is like a sacrosanct rock from Gibraltar. But rather than, that's why he sent the people, go and meet with them. So when you don't sit down and meet with the team, how can you arrive at a point? Let us be compassionate towards the Nigerian people who are going to be the first beneficiaries of this thing.
You have to explain to them in what way, because we keep saying that they're going to be the first beneficiaries.
So that part has been adequately communicated, understood by the grassroots, understood everywhere, even by the governors.
Yes.
That's why nobody is arguing the tax that somebody doesn't have to pay when he eats or when you enter public transport, when you earn certain amount, when your cap is lower than certain level, you don't have to pay tax. When it is above this, you pay this little. All of these ones now that we've communicated has been understood. We are now arrived at one section. That section,
yes,
only the governors are there protecting it.
And you've mentioned it before, the VAT distribution. I mean, Rivers State government, for instance, we know already, secured a court judgment regarding the VAT that it's supposed to be administered by states. And so this is actually partly what this reform is trying to address in one of the provisions, isn't it?
So what the federal government, you see, there were judgment from both Rivers and Lagos,
yes,
that the effect of which it means that states would administer the tax. But if you look at that judgment, the judgment is not political and flexible enough to also accommodate the interests of others, because it's a matter of rights and liabilities. But in politics, it's not about rights and liability. That is why it is not a winner takes all. You will concede in some and you will let go in others. So the president conceived of this, thought about this and conceived of an idea where it will be a win-win situation. You see, when you go to court in dispute, there is no win-win. It's only alternative dispute resolution. And even the reason why it's a win-win in alternative dispute resolution is because the parties determine the proceedings. You bring arbitrator, but when it is a dispute in court based on litigation, now one woman will come out, the other person is a loser. So that's why there is acrimony. President said, no, we don't want, just because it is a judgment in so case, let us go ahead and no. Let us have a conversation, because this tax law would outlive us and affect our generation and reposition Nigeria. And that's the mindset with which the president looked at it. From a point of view of collaboration, from a point of view of cooperation, from a point of view of dialogue. And the doors of the president has never been shut as far as the issue of dialogue is concerned. That's what at the slightest call the tax tamer in the plane. They are taxing on the road to go to where you are and have that honest conversation with the governors. And I want to salute the governors, because they have so far displayed maturity. They only express their reservation. Nobody is breaking the law. Nobody has come out to insult the president or fight the president. And every reservation that is expressed is good in democracy. But it must come to a point where there must be an agreement. Because when you say this is the line and not the move an inch, then you are turning it not to look at collaboration and negotiation. You are making it look like it is a matter of rights and liabilities.
Mr. Daniel Bwala, Special Advisor to the President on Policy Communication, thank you so much for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have on Arise Prime Time this evening. Stay with us tomorrow for another wonderful time. Thank you.